Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Ange Kirikoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 3 must-starts for the 2021 fantasy football season. On today's episode, of course, we're going to be talking about 5 individual prospects who I believe going into Week 3 are must-starts. Guys that, without a doubt, based on matchups, ample opportunity, and of course, a variety of statistics that I'm going to present to you guys, along with my opinion and thought process as to why I think these are justified plays going into this week. We'll kind of give you an argument and hopefully convince you to play these players and help yourself win in Week 3. Now, before we begin today's video, I want to, of course, thank you guys for the incredible support as of late. If you guys have not yet already, subscribe to the channel. We're making fantasy football content for the entirety of the 2021 fantasy football season, whether it is must-start videos, strength of schedule, trade targets, rankings videos, Sunday morning live streams. Do not forget, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I will be live streaming, answering questions with updated rankings at the running back, wide receiver, quarterback, and tight end positions, helping you capture a victory in Week 3. Of course, you'll see the players that I mentioned today within those rankings as I've adjusted them, as rankings are always subject to change throughout the week based on different variables, injuries that have obviously taken place. And for many of these players that we're going to be talking about today have benefited from the fact that there may be an injury on the other side of the ball or on their own team, which will give them ample opportunity. We'll go ahead and, of course, mention that. But again, do not forget, tomorrow morning, we'll be live streaming, and then on Monday, we'll talk about the waiver wire players to target going into Week 4 of the 2021 fantasy football season. Either way, thank you very much. Make sure you hit the like button down below. And don't forget to let me know down in the comment section what you guys think of today's must-start players, and of course, what other players that are currently outside of the top 15 of their current positions must be started going into Week 3 based on matchups and, of course, opportunity. Thank you very much. All right, let's get into this, shall we? I want to, of course, get right into it and start talking about some players. A player that I had relatively highly ranked in comparison to like the average ECR expert consensus ranking this week was Ty'Son Williams. Now, when I look at the Ravens matchup this upcoming week and they play against the Detroit Lions, all I see is money signs, because I think Ty'Son Williams is an incredible play because of the matchup itself and, of course, the opportunity that he has been given within the Baltimore Ravens' respective backfield. Now, of course, we all know J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards' injuries have certainly allowed Williams to get this opportunity, and along with the fact that Latavius Murray and Devontae Freeman have tried to get into this backfield and tried to learn this offense over the last couple weeks. Of course, he's had an advantage because he was with them all off season. Now, what we've seen from him already this season is very promising in terms of what he could potentially produce this upcoming week. In Week 1, 9 carries, 65 yards, and a receiving touchdown, 4 targets, 3 receptions, 29 receiving yards for 16.9 half PPR fantasy points. In Week 2, was able to get himself 13 carries for 77 yards, 2 receptions on 2 targets, and 16 receiving yards for 10.3 fantasy points. If he had not fumbled that rushing attempt on the 1-yard line that Duvernay had recovered for a touchdown, and he had scored that, Ty'Son Williams, as of this current moment in time in a half PPR scoring format, would be the number 6 overall running back in fantasy. And of course, without a doubt in your mind, you would be starting him. But I've seen it in multiple different occasions. A lot of people asking me whether or not they're starting Ty'Son Williams this week, which in my opinion is a no-brainer. And that's why I'm here to tell you guys you have to start him either as an RB2 or even your flex option if you are, stacked in terms of depth at the running back position already. Now, when we look at, of course, what the Detroit Lions have given up to opposing running backs already this season, Elijah Mitchell, 104 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. This past week, Monday Night Football, the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Jones absolutely put a number on him. He accumulated 115 yards and 4 touchdowns on Monday. What an incredible performance he was able to achieve. But to be totally honest, the Detroit Lions, it's not an uncommon thing to see running backs torch them and gather an incredible amount of points, especially going back to the 2020 fantasy football season. When I look at the last 13 games that the Detroit Lions have played throughout the regular season, of course, the last 2 regular season games of the 2021 season and the final 11 games of the 2020 season, I mean, the amount of points that Detroit has allowed to opposing running backs is unbelievable. They've given up 32.63 fantasy points per game on average in a half PPR to opposing running backs. I mean, that statistic alone is unbelievable to me. And this offseason, they've tried to go ahead and correct their issues and bring in different personnel in order to help stop the run, but it really hasn't been able to help. And when we talk about the Baltimore Ravens, a team that in the last 3 seasons have led all National Football League teams in rushing attempts, of course, due to the contributions of their running backs, but mainly Lamar Jackson, it makes it that much easier for these running backs to find success. I mean, there's a reason why in the last couple of years, Mark Ingram, J.K. Dobbins, and Gus Edwards all averaged over 5 yards per carry. And there's a reason why Ty'Son Williams at this current moment in time is averaging 6.5 yards per carry in this respective offense. And I understand there's always going to be the potential of a Latavius Murray and or a Lamar Jackson taking away touches and or touchdowns from Tyson Williams, considering, of course, last week, Sunday Night Football, we saw Lamar Jackson score 2 rushing touchdowns, and Latavius Murray has had back-to-back games of a rushing touchdown. But this offense against this specific defense is such an incredible matchup. I absolutely want to invest and play Tyson Williams this week. He's currently playing about 50% of the offensive snaps, and as long as he's going to be on the field, he has an incredible upside because not only is he dominating the entirety of the receiving work at the running back position, no other running back, Latavius Murray or Devontae Freeman this season, has gotten a target out of this backfield. So, of course, he's got that entire work locked down. And early in games, they're using him as a battering ram, and he is completely just running past defenders. I expect that to be the case this upcoming week. I mean, the Detroit Lions last season gave up 30 touchdowns to opposing running backs. That statistic alone obviously led the National Football League, but kind of gives you some understanding as to how putrid they have been in terms of stopping the run or even stopping the pass against opposing running backs, obviously from what we've seen this season against Elijah Mitchell and Aaron Jones. Either way, I absolutely believe that Tyson Williams is a must start. He should absolutely be in your lineup going into week 3. All right, let's go to move on and talk about our next prospect. We have Sterling Shepard. I saw an interview earlier this week on Yahoo Fantasy specifically, that Sterling Shepard said, this last training camp was my best training camp of my entire career. I've never felt better. I've never felt more comfortable in an offense. And based on what he's been able to produce as of late, that pretty much is, it's holding up. I mean, the fact that the Atlanta Falcons are giving up the 10th most points to opposing wide receivers thus far this season, and Sterling Shepard is coming off of back-to-back games of 9+ targets, 7+ receptions, and over 90 receiving yards in both contests is unbelievable. But it hasn't just been the last 2 games of the season. Yes, in week 1, he finishes the number 10 overall wide receiver in half PPR. In week 2, finishes the number 29 overall wide receiver. But going back to the 2020 season, at the back end there, week 16 and 17 with Daniel Jones at the quarterback position, with Jason Garrett still there as the offensive coordinator, they found a lot of success getting the ball to Sterling Shepard. In fact, in those 2 games, Sterling Shepard, 9 catches, 77 yards and a touchdown, 8 catches, 112 yards and a touchdown. That means in the last 4 regular season games that Sterling Shepard has played with Daniel Jones, he's averaged 10.25 targets, 8.25 receptions, 99 receiving yards, and 0.75 receiving touchdowns per game. I mean, the amount of production there is over 20 fantasy points per game in a full PPR, of course, and in a half PPR, he's a guy that must be started, and that's exactly why we're talking about him. I mean, in those 2 contests that I just mentioned, the back end of last season, finishes wide receiver 13 and wide receiver 4. So there's been a trend, and now that we're following it, and now that we've got him on roster, it's absolutely time to play him. Because when you play against the Atlanta Falcons, their slot corners and their defenders aren't the greatest. Obviously last week, they showed some weaknesses either against Chris Godwin and or Gronkowski, Mike Evans. The receiving options for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were able to score. There's a reason why Tom Brady was able to throw 5 touchdowns. But even if you go back to week 1, I mean, Jalen Hurts had himself a very easy time against this defense. And I absolutely do believe that of all the receiving options for the New York Giants, Sterling Shepard's going to continue to find himself a lot of opportunity as long as Saquon Barkley isn't catching the ball much out of the backfield. With Kenny Golladay, Darius Slayton, them not using Kadarius Toney at all in any capacity, didn't even see a target this past week. I think Sterling Shepard, as a guy that, of course, is running more shallow routes, and, of course, with this offensive line, the injuries that they've faced, Daniel Jones has to get the ball out of his hands, and he can only do so much running. And when he goes ahead, he drops back. His first read is typically looking in the direction of a Sterling Shepard type wide receiver, and he's certainly finding himself a lot of value in doing so. So, either way, I think he's an absolute must-start. Throw him into your lineup and reap the benefits of Sterling Shepard this upcoming week, whether it is a half or a full PPR scoring format. The next player I wanted to go ahead and mention today is Tre Sermon. Though a lot of the attention of the San Francisco 49ers backfield has been on Elijah Mitchell, Jermichael Hasty, Raheem Mostert, and the injuries that they have faced in the last couple weeks, the entire offseason was the Tre Sermon show. Everyone was investing in Tre Sermon because we thought, based on, of course, the snap percentages that he had gone and been committed to in the preseason contests and the amount of, production that we saw out of him in those games, Tre Sermon's probably the number 2 RB on the team. And if and when Raheem Mostert would go down with an unfortunate injury, which he already has, Tre Sermon would be given the reins of this backfield. But that wasn't the immediate exchange in week 1, as we saw Tre Sermon was inactive and Elijah Mitchell picked up a lot of yardage, like we mentioned earlier, in regards to Tyson Williams' matchup. Elijah Mitchell against the Detroit Lions week 1, when Raheem Mostert went down 104 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown and had himself a great game. But then they went into week 2, and Elijah Mitchell went down with a shoulder injury. And then JaMychal Hasty got himself a high ankle sprain. And both of those players, specifically JaMychal Hasty, is already out for week 3. And then you look at, of course, Elijah Mitchell. Can he play this week? He's currently doubtful, and whether or not he plays is going to be determined by the team doctors, because like I heard Kyle Shanahan mention yesterday in an interview, if in fact Elijah Mitchell can do more damage to his shoulder, the doctors are not going to let him persist and continue to play. But if in fact he can't, then he'll play and he'll go ahead and fight through the pain. But as it currently stands, if in fact we don't see Elijah Mitchell out there, which is most likely going to be the case, then Tre Sermon is a fantastic option because he's cleared the concussion protocol after, of course, his first carry in week 2 of the 2021 fantasy football season. He was hit, he fumbled, he suffered a concussion. It was a good run, 8 yards down the field, but unfortunately, it just all didn't clear up. But with this all said, if Tre Sermon's going to be the starting running back for this team, based on, of course, health, then he's got an incredible amount of opportunity. I mean, we've talked about it earlier this week in terms of how much success Kyle Shanahan has found against the Green Bay Packers. I mean, in the last 4 games that he's played against the Green Bay Packers, these are the totals of the backfields that the San Francisco 49ers have produced. Matt Breida and Mostert went for 26 rushing attempts, 148 rushing yards, and a touchdown. Coleman and Mostert went for 17 rushing attempts, 84 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns. Mostert by himself in that NFC Championship game, of course, went for that 29 rushing or 220-yard, 4-touchdown game. We all remember that. And even last year, with a very injured offense, whether it was the line, the quarterback, the receivers, Jerick McKinnon against the Green Bay Packers was still able to get himself 12 carries for 52 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown against the Green Bay Packers defense. And we all know the Green Bay Packers defense year over year has been one of the worst in the National Football League in terms of giving up points to the opposing running back position. And though we didn't see much production out of the Detroit Lions in week 2, it mainly had to do with game script. As soon as, in fact, the Detroit Lions lost their lead, Jared Goff was turning over the ball, they could not go to running the ball any longer, and they weren't able to find success on the ground. But I absolutely believe that the San Francisco 49ers, of all teams, are a run-first mentality. There's a reason why they have one of the best run-blocking tight ends with George Kittle and one of the best run-blocking fullbacks, and of course, kind of Swiss Army knives with Kyle Juszczyk. They want to continue to run the ball. They have 2 of the best run-blocking offensive tackles in the league. They've improved their interior of their offensive line, bringing in Tomlinson and Mack. Honestly, this is a run-first team against the defense that has looked very bad this season and is probably going to be exposed this upcoming week. In my opinion, Tre Sermon should be a must-start. If Elijah Mitchell is not going to go because of his shoulder injury and he has a potential of continuing to damage himself, then why not throw in a rookie running back that is going to potentially have the entire range of this backfield? Yes, they've brought in practice squad players. They've brought in Kerryon Johnson, who got cut from the Eagles. You know, they have players. Trent Cannon, more or less, he's going to be a special teams player for this offense. But the 49ers have brought in, 3 or 4 running backs, but it's mainly because they need depth. And if, in fact, something is to happen to these running backs again and more injuries are to occur, they need someone to at least know their offense for a following week. And though Kerryon Johnson's probably been there the longest, he probably won't see much work this upcoming week. He may not even be active. It'll just have to wait and see. As of this current moment in time, I think there's a lot of potential hope for Tre Sermon taking this job, starting this upcoming week, and finding a lot of success against Green Bay and starting his legacy in week 3. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to Chase Claypool. Claypool's in a very interesting situation, mainly because Deontay Johnson is injured. He's going to benefit from the fact that Deontay Johnson is not on the field because we know how much opportunity Johnson has gotten. Already in the last 2 weeks of the season, he's gotten 22 total targets. If you go back to the 2020 season with Ben Roethlisberger in the lineup, Deontay Johnson was able to get 10 games of 10-plus targets. Now, of course, being the number 1 outside receiver, getting open, the ability to run routes and find yourself open and get targets, that in itself is the skill of Deontay Johnson. But I do believe with his absence, James Washington won't be able to fill that spot to that extent. And I think, of course, Ben Roethlisberger is going to be looking elsewhere, whether that is Juju Smith-Schuster, but mainly Chase Claypool, because I do find that Chase Claypool is their number 1 outside guy and is probably going to be benefiting the most from this. Now, when I look at the amount of opportunities he's been given this season, he's only gotten 14 total targets. And obviously last week, wasn't able to get as many receptions as he would have liked. 9 total targets, 3 receptions, 70 yards, got a couple rushing attempts, but nothing came of it. Of course, we look at Chase Claypool and we think to ourselves, he's got to score a touchdown. And I think of all the weeks that he can potentially do so, this upcoming week against the Cincinnati Bengals seems like a pretty good opportunity. Now, when I talk about opportunity, specifically in the case of Chase Claypool, all we need to see is 9 targets once again. Because in his career thus far in 2020 and 2021, when he has gotten 9 or more targets from Ben Roethlisberger, the guy's averaging 16.48 fantasy points per game in a half PPR scoring format. That's been 7 times in his career thus far. So as long as you can get him the ball, he's going to be able to produce. And especially against the Cincinnati Bengals, where he's found success in the past. I mean, going back to last season, in a game against them, he had 2 receiving touchdowns. So it's only a matter of time until we see Chase Claypool kind of make his presence felt in 2021, as he's been relatively quiet thus far this season. Of course, we've seen Deontay Johnson play well, Juju Smith-Schuster run in a touchdown last week, but this offense has been relatively quiet. Ben Roethlisberger is dealing with a pectoral injury. That is not on his throwing side. It's going to be on his left side. So I think Ben Roethlisberger is going to be fine. And to be honest, the way that defense specifically for the Pittsburgh Steelers has been dealing with injuries, it may be more of a competitive contest between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Steelers, and hopefully it'll force Big Ben to throw the ball, and of course in the direction of Claypool, which eventually will go. It's just a matter if he can catch that touchdown. I end up thinking he probably will this upcoming week. That is why we mentioned him as another must-start player. For those of you who are wondering, where should I be going with my wide receiver 3 or a potential flex play in a PPR? The last option I wanted to mention, specifically in a PPR format, is James White. Every single week we talk about, man, James White was fantastic. Getting himself 6 catches, over 40 receiving yards, fantastic. We'll take those kind of points. That's 10 points in a full PPR scoring format. So the reason why I wanted to go ahead and mention James White is because many of us often get into a situation in which we're starting players that are in really bad matchups. Specifically this upcoming week, when I look at Darrell Henderson, he's already dealing with a rib injury, and he plays against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you're going to already be in a bad matchup and your running back is dealing with an injury, why go and throw him out there when you can have an easy 10-point production from a running back in a full PPR setting like James White? A guy that has consistently seen 6 and 7 targets each of the last 2 weeks. And with Mac Jones, this offense is looking a lot like the days in which Tom Brady was here dumping the ball off to James White as a security blanket. Now, when we go into this upcoming week, they do take on the New Orleans Saints. And the reason why I want to specifically mention that is because as of thus far this season, the New Orleans Saints have only given up the 25th most points to opposing running backs. Obviously, they have been quite good. In fact, they've only given up 2.69 yards per carry this season. And in comparison to all other teams, that's the second best in the National Football League, only behind the Carolina Panthers. So as it currently stands, they play against a very tough matchup. And though the incredible run-stop defense of the New Orleans Saints does not immediately affect James White, it mainly affects the potential of Damian Harris. And if Damian Harris can't consistently find production on the ground, and they're not able to gain the yardage they could typically get on a weekly basis, as of course they have consistently handed the ball off to Damian Harris thus far this season and found a lot of consistency over 4 yards per carry. If they're not able to see that in this contest, well, who do you think is going to come in on third downs, potentially even second downs, in order to get them out of those second and long, third and long situations? I expect it to be James White. I expect him to have a lot of utilization on this team. I mean, just this last week, Christian McCaffrey was able to tear them up, 5 catches for 65 yards on 6 targets. And though that isn't a consistent basis because a lot of teams don't have the receiving backs like a McCaffrey or a James White, I think White is going to be heavily utilized in this upcoming week's contest against the New Orleans team that certainly wants to prove themselves. And of course, a team like the New England Patriots, who is trying to find an advantage in any possible scenario they can. And I think this week their advantage is going to come from the short yardage receiving game of a James White, being able to gather 6 or more, maybe even double-digit targets this upcoming week, which will eventually lead to this offense getting out of their third and second and long situations into far more advantageous positions. But I think the tougher matchup this upcoming week benefits the third down PPR back of a James White and his overall potential. And if you are in a situation where you, of course, have a flex play that you're not certain about, that are going to be playing in tough matchups, are already dealing with injuries, then why not just opt for the player that is going to get you the guaranteed points? And that's what I suggest this upcoming week, is James White potentially being a must start for your team. Those are my week 3 must starts. Thank you everybody for watching. Let me know what you guys think of this kind of a concept of an episode. I'm just trying to test out a bunch of different things on Saturdays, of course, whether it was hidden gems or the matchups videos. I'm just trying to rotate, see what you guys kind of respond to. Thank you everybody for watching. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we will be, conducting a live stream here on the channel, helping you guys set your lineups for week 3 of the 2021 fantasy football season. Until next time, tomorrow morning, I'll see you guys. Otherwise, if you're not able to make that, I'll see you guys on Monday afternoon, of course, talking about some waiver wire pickups. And until then, I'll see you guys. Peace.